Now that we know a little bit more about Git, it's time to turn our attention to focus on GitHub. So in this chapter, we're going to focus on the basics of GitHub and some of the things that you can accomplish directly on the site. So I've navigated to GitHub and I've signed in to my James Will Web 2 account and I'm ready to start working. Now, if I take a look at my account and I go to my repos, I can see that I have the Git Basics repo that we've been working on so far in the course. But what if I wanted to add a new repo? Well, there are a lot of different ways to do that. If I go back to, say, the home page, if you will, of GitHub, I can see that down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little link for a new repository. Right down here, there's a create a repository link. That's more of an article, kind of walks you through this process. But even in that, there's a link to create one. If I go up to my account, I notice there's a little plus symbol beside that. And when I click on that, here's a link to create a new repository. And if I'm in the account view itself and I go to repositories, there's a link to create a new repository. I think you get the idea. Almost everywhere you are inside of GitHub, you can create a brand new repository. Now, this isn't going to do anything for us local just yet. This is going to create a repository on the site. So I'm going to go ahead and click new. It doesn't matter where you do it at. We're just going to go ahead and create a brand new repository. The first thing that's going to ask us to do is to create a repository name. And I'm just going to call this one GitHub Basics. See what I did there? So GitHub Basics. And the description for this one is remote repo to help me test out my GitHub skills. I bet you couldn't see that coming, right? From a mile away. Okay, now, this one's going to be public as well. Now, there's a couple of things down here that we're actually going to do in later movies in this chapter. So we're not going to do them right now, except for a license. We're going to do that. So we're not going to do a git ignore. We're not going to do a readme. But I do want to add a license to this. GitHub recommends that you add a license to any of your public repositories. If it's a private repository, if it's a private repo, it's just your project, that's one thing. But any repo that you put on your GitHub free account is going to be public, meaning anybody can go in and download it. So it's really helpful if you add a license. Now, the nice thing about this is they have a lot of open source licenses available. They have the MIT license that I see all over the place these days, the GPL2, the Apache version 2. And most of these are open source libraries. We have Creative Commons Universal, which is one of my favorite ones. And there is a place on the GitHub site where you can go read more about these licenses so that you know what terms you're licensing your content under so that it's going to be used in the way that you intend it to be used. All right, so I'm just going to use the Creative Commons 1.0 Universal. I'm going to turn off initialize this repository with a README. I'm going to turn that off. And the reason I'm going to turn that off is because I'm going to create that manually in the next exercise. All right, I'm going to go ahead and create the repo. And we've seen this before. If you remember in the last chapter when we were doing our push, we came in and created a repository really quickly, a remote one, and we had all this sort of quick setup stuff. So, of course, we just created this remote repository. It doesn't have any files in it other than the license that we gave it, which isn't really a separate file, but we haven't really added any files to it yet. We don't have a README. We don't have a git ignore file, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. So in this code view that we have over here on the right-hand side, there's really nothing to see. So we need to start adding some files to it, and we'll start in the next movie by adding a README file.